Welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Return to Joy online workshop. I'm very happy that you guys have signed up for the workshop. I'm Kara Johnson. I am your host and teacher. And today we're in Mesa, Arizona. And we are with Wayne Johnson. He is a gifted family counselor and regression therapist. He also happens to be my dad. He's been helping people heal from trauma and map trauma pain for over 40 years. I'm very grateful that he's able to join our series. And today we're going to be talking with him about what is trauma, mapping trauma, and how you heal trauma through regression work. But before we begin, I'd really like to give him an opportunity to share with you a little bit of history of how he got his start in psychology and how he found his way to regression work. So, okay. Hi, Dad.
Hi,
Okay, so you just want to share kind of how you got your start?
Yeah, I was at ASU in pre-law until my senior year, and I was going through some really horrific depression and anxiety, which I didn't understand. But I remember going to the psychiatrist on campus, and I remember basically weeping all the way through the session. And then when 55 minutes was up, he said, "Well, time's up," and I went out the back door, and I thought, if this is psychiatry or psychology, heaven help us. And then a little bit later, I took an elective, ed psych, and I thought it'd be a no-brainer. But I fell in love with the class. The teacher was unbelievable. She's one of the most incredible listeners I'd ever seen. I remember like having an individual session with her, which we all did. And I swore the next time I would go in, I was going to put duct tape over my mouth because I would just be spilling my whole life. I couldn't figure out what she was doing. But at the end of this course, she said, "Wayne, you'd make a good counselor." And I thought, oh, okay. So I went out and changed my major. Wow. And that was kind of how it started.
That's how it started. So I know that I know you met somebody in your college years that was a very influential person in your life. I know he introduced you to Buddhism and meditation and breathing and all these wonderful tools. I also know that when you first began doing counseling, you were working with troubled boys, right? You helped found an organization called Helaman House, and you were working with troubled teens. Can you tell me kind of how you started there and how you kind of bled into doing more family counseling, and when you kind of switched over into regression work, and why, kind of how that happened?
Probably the most significant thing of all was meeting Larry, who was my mentor. And he was a school psychologist. He came down from Flagstaff. I was still going through anxiety and depression, and I remember fasting for 2 or 3 days and praying, and had my little scriptures out, and fell asleep, and I had a dream. And in the dream, I saw Christ on this cross, and he was suffering more than I was. And so I began to pray for him. And as I did, it's like I was healed in the dream. And then the next scene, I was on top of this building trying to tell everybody about this incredible love, or this incredible love. And when I woke up the next day, I went to a Title it was a Title 20 Project Center for Innovation with the Mesa Public Schools. At the top of the stairs, I saw Larry, who I had never met, but the feeling of the dream came back to me unbelievably, and I knew that I would have to meet this man.
Yeah.
And I remember I was the janitor, and I was only 2 of about 70 young people that had a full-time job with the Mesa schools, because I was really a hard worker, I thought. And one day, after a few days, he said, I was down in the hall, and he says, "This place is filthy." And it just blew me away, and I didn't get over it for a few weeks. I thought, who is this man? And then one day he invited me into this room. They were doing regressive work. I didn't even know what that was. And he took me through 2 situations that literally healed the anxiety at that time.
Wow. So there are some people that I know that are in our audience that may not understand or know what regression work is. And I also know that there's a lot of information out there that kind of demonizes a little bit of regression work. So explain to me what regression work is to you and how you utilize it. And then from there, we'll start talking about trauma.
The demonizing basically comes from false memory syndrome.
Right.
And I've been trained in clinical hypnosis, but I don't use it for regressive work, because my theory is that trauma and shock is exactly like clinical hypnosis. So when a person goes into shock or trauma, they're in a state of hypnosis, or what you would call speed hypnosis. And so whatever they're thinking, feeling, sensing with their body imprints at such a deep level that it can last a lifetime.
Okay.
And so I use self-hypnosis, which is you're giving yourself the self-suggestion to remember something. You just relax, close your eyes. You could use any kind of relaxation. It's just that the person themselves is in charge, not me.
Okay. So you're like a midwife.
Mm-hmm.
You're guiding them, helping them guide in.
Yes.
And I know that you also use breath work.
Yes.
So we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
But I think you touched on something just there when you were saying that when somebody goes through some form of shock or trauma, that it's almost a form of self-hypnosis and there's a deep imprint. So I think that most people, when you use the word trauma, they're associating that with something very grand. For example, airplane crash, or death of a loved one, mm-hmm. or incurable disease. Mm-hmm. But from my work with you and what I've witnessed is that trauma can be anything that skews your perception away from joy, self-esteem, love, self-love. Okay. So talk me through how trauma imprints and what really trauma is.
Okay. First of all, they go into clinical hypnosis, not self-hypnosis.
Okay.
Self-hypnosis is giving yourself the suggestion to remember something.
Got it.
And nobody's in charge of you.
Okay.
So I don't want to replicate clinical hypnosis, which is what the person's coming in for.
Okay.
Because they were traumatized and clinical hypnosis is the vehicle.
Got it.
And so when a person goes into shock, what happens is their mind cannot comprehend what's going on. For example, like if you're in the first grade, a little child has an accident,
Okay.
and the teacher humiliates them in front of the class. Maybe she's having a bad day, whatever, but the child goes into a state of shock. Children are laughing. His whole world falls apart. Whatever he's thinking, sensing, or feeling, even if it's distorted, goes into him more real than real.
Okay. So let's expand that example. So let's say a little boy, let's say he's 7.
Mm-hmm.
He's in class. He is called on to give an answer. He doesn't know the answer. He makes something up. The teacher chastises him, and the kids in the classroom laugh at him. Take me through what's happening for him, what's imprinting on him, or could be imprinting on him on a physical and emotional level that would cause what you would term as trauma.
Okay. I have a really good example of a little first grader.
Okay.
The teacher said to the class, go pick a book from the little library thing, and you can read us your story.
Okay.
This little boy got up. He picked, I think it was a Dr. Seuss book, Green Eggs, I Am Sam, or something. I
Green
can't
eggs
remember.
and ham.
Yeah, Green Eggs and Ham. And he starts to tell the story by the pictures.
Okay.
Okay.
Because he can't read the words.
Because he can't read the words. All of a sudden the teacher says, that is the stupidest thing that I've ever heard. You are the most ignorant child I've ever seen. Sit down, and I'll have the next person come up. Little boy goes and puts his head down on his table. He thinks that he is absolutely the dumbest thing on earth. This will never change, even though he has a high IQ. He barely gets through grade school. He barely gets through junior high. He drops out in high school. He is one of the most brilliant artists by the time he's about 35 when he meets me. He and his wife are in a business. They're about to have a separation because he can't do the reading. He can't do the business stuff. All he can do is do the artwork. And he didn't know why. And we finally took him back to this event, which he didn't think was significant.
Right.
However, he broke down and sobbed and sobbed. And as he goes through it, I'll say, how did you feel physically? His legs were heavy. He felt like he was spinning, which is all the physical sensation of shock. So I have him repeat that. It's behavioral desensitization.
Okay.
And there's about 7 or 8 psychological methods that I'm employing. But I'd go through the physical, and it would dissipate. That's called the trauma resolution. Then I go to the emotions. How are you feeling? I feel devastated. I feel shattered. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are that I am the dumbest person in the whole wide world. I can never, ever be able to learn or to read.
Okay.
And we go through each of those and clear them, because memory is not just in the brain case. Memory is at a cellular level, and it's physical, emotional, and mental.
Got it. Okay. So at that point, what happened for him is he had a moment of a clinical hypnosis type experience that imprinted on him with physical sensation, emotional feelings,
and thought distortion.
Mm-hmm. And even though on the grand scale of his life, no one would ever look at that and say major trauma point that has skewed his perception, it has had impact. Does it happen that when somebody has something like that they begin to call in or have layers of other similar experience that have that same resonance?
Yeah, I call it the domino effect. It's, for example, let's say by the time this man gets to be his age, he's already had all kinds of trauma educationally through his career, either through work or through school or whatever.
Right.
So when he has a moment of trauma here, it dominoes all the way into this moment.
Got it.
All of the residue of those traumas come here, and he's overwhelmed and literally shuts down, which is what shock does. Shock, literally, a person cannot think. They cannot fire their thoughts in sequence. In other words, they can't control their body because their mind is in such a whirlpool. And so anyway, it's and a lot of times people, for example, with like molestation, somebody says, a 5-year-old says, well, why didn't I just run away, or why didn't I whatever? When we go back to the point of impact, we realize that she went into shock. She froze because this froze her body. She couldn't move. She couldn't think.
Right. So she shut down.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so again, for the audience, what I'm trying to show you here is, and as we walk through the Return to Joy series, what I'm wanting to introduce you to is that there's many modalities that you can utilize to help release pain experiences, emotional and physical pain. The reason why regression work has been, for me, I've seen it being very, very revolutionary, is that it can help remove very intense trauma in a very short period of time. And Dad, explain how you take somebody in to have them connect to that through their own self-hypnosis, because I know that I've watched sessions that you've done and I've been involved in sessions, and I know that you utilize breath. And I know, based on my history with you and our family and meditation, the breath is definitely something that helps open up and connect your emotional and physical and thought patterns. So share with me how you're utilizing breath, and how that helps you help the person access points of pain.
Almost every culture or every tradition sees breath as Holy Spirit.
Okay.
And they say that the breath is the connection between the body and the spirit. And so it's a very sacred process. I use a combination of what they call domino breathing, which is taken from the Nyingma Tibetan tradition. I've taken some things from the rebirthers, who are very, very good in regards to breath. And so I can, when I have somebody come in, I build a trauma map. In other words, I'm taking a look at the different traumas that they have. If there's a pervasive trauma, what are the points of impact? If it's just a one-time trauma, what is the point of impact? If there's a death, I'll break it up into about 3 points of impact. And so the breath, if somebody has kind of a vague memory, I'll have them breathe deeply and for a period of time, because the enhanced breathing actually activates cellular memory, and so I don't have to use clinical hypnosis.
Okay. So show me. I know it's kind of weird to have somebody see what that means, and in just a moment we're going to go into and talk about trauma mapping, because I know many people will look back on their history and say, yeah, I had a normal childhood. I'm okay. I don't really have anything that's causing me pain. But when you look at their life, again, as we're talking about returning to joy, they wouldn't code their life as being ridiculously joyful. They don't have that emotion in their bandwidth. And my perception is that is because there are some layers in there that they need to heal. So Dad, can you show me for just a quick second what kind of breathing that you help them do? And I can breathe with you if you want.
That's okay. It's called a connected breathing or circular breathing, because the inhale and the exhale is, there's very little pausing between the inhale and exhale. And I have people breathe through their mouth. I had an opera singer just lately tell me that they did a thing where they actually breathed through a straw.
Wow.
And it's like and I guarantee you, if you breathe that way for 20 minutes, you'll be feeling buzzing all over.
Okay.
Which means that your cells are alive and that memory is more accessible.
Okay. So that actually prompts another quick question. And this is just a personal question, but I think it might affect or impact other people. You guys might have a similar question. So I know, for example, Patrick, my partner, my beautiful partner, does cycling. And the cycling breathing, they actually encourage them and teach them that they're breathing deeply through their mouth. And I know that when he leaves to go for a ride, he might have stress and he might be kind of, his energy level might be down. He goes on the ride and he's having something kind of happen to him. When he comes back, there's a sense of release. So is there an advantage to doing circular breathing, even if you're not trying to actively activate memory? Is there an advantage to doing circular breathing in form of relaxation and getting yourself into an open state so that you can even start pushing positive thinking through your system and have that make an impact?
Okay. Breathing this way is extremely helpful. I mean, there's study after study after study showing what breathing does, increasing endorphins, um, increasing well-being, whatever. When you couple that with the self-suggestion to remember something,
Yes.
whether it be joyful or whether it be negative, it will take you there
Okay.
very, very quickly and very deeply.
Okay, got it. Okay, so walk me through. So again, I'm kind of back to that same question or comment, which is many people that I talk to, while they don't code their life as being super fantastically awesome, um, and they don't actually code anything happening behind them as being horribly traumatic. But we know that there's some experiences that they've had in their life that have caused a depletion in their appreciation or self-love. So how do they do trauma mapping if they can't remember? I know you were using a book, and there was a survey in there. Talk to me about how you, when a client comes in and you need their help in trauma mapping, what direction do you give them for helping them
Well, first
find
of
that?
all, I describe what trauma is.
Okay.
And it can be something seemingly very, very minimal, or it can be something dramatic. And so we kind of map whatever that they can remember.
Right.
And then once I take them to a place, then memories start to really open up. Windows of opportunity just flood. So, and then I add to the trauma map.
Okay. Okay, so if we have some of the people that are attending the workshop, and I want to give them direction on creating their own trauma map, what direction would we provide them so that they could begin to sort of map out what may be or may not be traumatic for them in their past?
Like if they're doing this on their own.
If they're just wanting to get insight on what areas or ages where they may need to get additional help, I'd want to help them get clear on what may have created problems for them.
Typically what I'll do is I'll give them an example of a kindergartner or a first grader and showing like how dramatic that can be, even though it doesn't seem dramatic to an adult.
Got it.
I may have something that's very, very dramatic that everybody would see as a trauma
Right.
or shock. The other thing is that if you read anything on the rebirthers, the prenatal, postnatal, and birthing sequence, they say that all life patterns, all traumas, everything are built upon that period of time.
Wow.
9 months in the womb, birthing sequence, post.
Got it. So right there, that's a first trauma point as they're coming out.
So everybody has trauma.
Right.
The other thing is that most people don't know that certain things have been traumatic to them.
Okay.
They may not even be aware of it. Some may not.
Okay.
But the problem is that people become divided from themselves.
Okay.
They're not able to be like whole. And basically, I think that's the purpose of meditation, is to like become centered, become whole, become grounded.
Got it.
This is just another type of meditation.
Okay. Got it.
And so is bicycling.
Got it. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to take it a step further. Through trauma mapping, what they would do if they wanted to do an exercise at your home, you would basically take a notebook, a piece of paper, and you would basically do an inventory as far back as you can remember, anything that might have impacted you and caused you to feel less than your perfect self. And then you start seeing if there's patterns within those experiences. I want you to walk me through what happens within somebody when they have trauma and the splintering. You've kind of touched on it a little bit with the disassociation, but the splintering of the self. So I know that you have done a lot of writings and research about multiple children and what happens when we're sort of divided within, what happens when a certain age of our history gets shocked. For example, a 7-year-old part of ourself that is still sort of encased almost in a cocoon of wounding. So can you walk through what that looks like and how you help integrate?
Okay. The most complex dissociation is what they used to call multiple personality disorder.
Okay.
They now call it dissociative disorder not otherwise diagnosed.
Okay.
I worked with a lady that was severely ritually abused from birth to about 8, and we stopped counting little altars at 200.
Oh, wow.
And that's a very specific type of dissociation. The person has to be very, very bright. because it's very complex. There's a host altar, and whoever needs to be on stage, that person will put them on stage. It's like these little altars take turns being on stage and taking care of the system. Sometimes it gets too complicated, and they kind of have a breakdown or something very, very close to a breakdown.
So this is the extreme of the disassociation.
Dissociation.
Okay. So take me through, for example, let's go back to our example of the boy at 7. Take me through what happens for him in the integration and how that plays out for him before and after healing.
Okay. There's 2 parts to the regressive work that I do.
Okay.
First part is like you're going in and you're actually healing the moment. And you're doing what they call trauma resolution therapy, or a type of it. And so I go through and I take into account the physical, emotional, cognitive, and we clear that. However, because trauma for children, and for at least children, is abandonment. So in other words, mom and dad weren't there to protect them. Mom and dad may have been the one hurting them.
Okay.
Either case, the child detaches from the bonding process.
Okay.
So as a result, this guy, even though he's in his 30s, there's a part of him that's like about 7 emotionally.
Okay.
He pretends. It's like what I call the Wizard of Oz syndrome. I am Oz. I am Oz. No, you're a little 7-year-old behind the curtain.
So he pretends older,
Yep.
But emotionally he feels younger.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So what I do is I say, let's say his name is Bob. Bob, if you could go back in time and do something for this little boy, what would you do if you could be the dad?
So you have him step in as the parent.
Tears come down.
Okay.
All of a sudden, he begins to realize how abandoned this child is. Goes in, bonds with him, very loving, very emotional. And so we reattach. So there's trauma resolution, bonding, and attachment.
Okay.
Because from the time you've been conceived or born, or however you want to see that, you've been taught how to become your own emotional parent by mom and dad validating you through all the developmental stages.
Got it.
If there's a
break,
you have to heal it, bring it together,
okay,
so you're restored to wholeness.
Okay. So I want to repeat some of the things I heard you say, because I think there were some beautiful things that you said in there, and I want to make sure that everybody hears that. So what I hear you saying is that when a child is experiencing trauma, regardless of what that trauma is, at the foundational point of that is the trauma of abandonment. Is this correct?
Big time.
Okay, so regardless of what has transpired, the root cause of what is the thing that you're healing on has to do with abandonment from love of parent, either one or the other. Is this correct?
Abandonment because the child perceives that either mom and dad didn't care or mom and dad are hurting.
Didn't hurt. Okay, hurt him. Okay. And what you're doing as a modality of healing is you are reconnecting them into and putting them back on the path of being their own unconditional emotional parent.
Right.
And in this way, you have the most profound level of healing.
And what's so extraordinary about it is that that's what should have happened in the first place. And this person, this older man, knows what the 7-year-old is feeling and thinking more than even his natural parents would have.
Right.
So who better?
Who better to heal?
Who better to heal?
Who better to bond?
Yep.
What happens if you have someone who feels so associated with that disconnected or wounded self that when you try to engage them and say, now you're going to step in also as the parent to love this part, and they can't put themselves in the seat of also being the unconditional parent.
Okay.
How does that look?
I had a lady, and this is how I came up with this process. She was borderline schizophrenic. She felt like she had been molested, but every time I'd go in to try to figure out like where, when, or what, she would just fragment, so I couldn't do that.
Right.
And so I fasted and prayed 2 or 3 days. And about 1:30 in the morning, something came to me, and I saw a little boy who was about 1.5 years in a hospital crib, and his mom and dad were walking away. Baby is sobbing and crying, and I was crying for the baby. It was like really, really powerful. All of a sudden, I realized the baby was me, and he was going in for surgery, which was a real thing. I'd had a hernia operation that I didn't remember. And so I held him and loved him. I said, I'm going to go through the surgery with you. I'm going to be right here with you. And that's how this came to be. So I came back the next week. I called her beforehand. I said, bring every picture you have from birth to teenage years. And so she did. And I said, okay, let's take a look at these pictures. Here's the 1-year-old. What do you think? Oh, she's beautiful. 2-year-old. Oh, she's wonderful. The 3-year-old. She's a sweetheart. 4-year-old, same thing. What about 5-year-old? She's a whore.
Wow.
I said, bingo. We have hit the mother load. Okay, no pun intended. So it's like, I said, okay, let's put all the other pictures away. Look at this picture, close your eyes, and I want you to tell me, how far away is she from you? Oh, about the length of a football field. And I said, is she facing you or back to you? Her back's to me. So what we begin to do is what we call behavioral desensitization. I have her move the baby forward, relax forward until we get the child. It took a while to get this. Then I have her turn her around like this.
Got it.
And she's sitting right in front of us. I said, okay, now I want you to say this. You are a little whore. She breaks down and sobs and sobs and sobs. And I said, what's wrong? She says, she's not a whore. I said, she is a precious little girl. And I'm holding her right now. I said, okay, so what we're going to do now, we now can go to the point of impact because she's in your arms and she's not fighting it, which we did, and she was healed.
That is beautiful.
And by the way, that's how this therapy came to pass.
That's how you started working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for all of you that are listening and watching, we're going to have a video exercise that we send out after today's session. And that is going to include a meditation designed to take you through breathing and help you get access into different aspects of yourself. And it's a very similar process. I'm going to be asking you to look through your photographs and pictures and find a picture that maybe when you look at it, you feel either some dissociation, pain, anything other than full love. And you're going to begin working with that child and bringing that child closer to yourself. This is, again, a very simple exercise that you can do that kind of pulls in some of these aspects of regression to help you connect into the aspects of yourself that need more love. Dad, I know that you have, we've talked about trauma from the point of points of impact that may not be really intense. For example, or on first blush, a little boy stands up, he gets humiliated in front of the class, and this has caused impact. I'd like to touch on a little bit about trauma points that are very obviously trauma points. And I know that the top 3 that sort of cycle through your clientele is some kind of abuse, physical or emotional abuse, death, and divorce. Can you talk me through death? Death is a big one. We're all going to at some point deal with somebody that we love or care about that's passing on. Talk to me about how that trauma impacts. Talk to me about how you're healing that trauma. Just anything you can share on that topic of healing something as big as death.
With death, it's the only trauma I can't get 100% of. If I get 90, everybody's happy.
Okay.
Because the child or the person or the loved one is gone.
Okay.
I had one lady one time, she says, I'm 50% and I'm good to go. and she was, bless her heart. I remember one lady who had a baby girl that was 6 that had terminal cancer. And it was just unbelievable. The baby would scream and cry and the mother would hold her. And she held her for 9 months. And then the little one passed away. And it was heart-wrenching of what both child and mother went through. But I started the trauma map from the point of the baby. We realized she's sick.
Okay.
And then what happens after that, and then the next point, and then the next point. And there were a lot of points in this one because it was a pervasive, horrific trauma. And then we go to where she dies. We go to a viewing. We go to a funeral. We go to a gravesite. All of those are points of impact. And even if you clear this one, doesn't mean that this one's cleared.
Got it.
And so you have to go through. And with this type of trauma, I go through as quickly as I can. I'll go through in 4 days if I can.
Because you don't want to leave them open with some of that wounding in the heart center.
No, and it's like with this kind of trauma, it's almost like Steven Spielberg's storyboard. It's like a comic book frame by frame. So I go in and clear this frame to where it's totally cleared. Then I move to the next frame, totally cleared.
Talk to me about what you mean by clearing when you're working, for example, with a mother who's going through what will be the death of her child who has terminal cancer. So how are you clearing that? Because at that point, she's not holding herself.
Okay, so the first point of impact, she finds out that the little one has cancer.
Okay.
And so I say, where were you? At the hospital. Are you standing or sitting? I'm sitting. How does your body feel? I feel like I'm out of my body. I feel like emotionally I'm in a state of shock. I want to die. I want to go with my baby, especially at the end.
Okay.
And so I go through and I clear. And I say, I feel like I'm spinning. I feel dizzy. I have her repeat that until it dissipates emotionally. I'm shattered. I'm in shock. I'm beyond words for sadness. Say it enough times, it clears. The thought distortion, I have her repeat it. It begins to dissipate. Then I move to the next point of impact.
Okay. So I want to call that out. So at this stage, what he's doing is he is actually having the person repeat the feelings until the feelings no longer have energy. So he's working on the physical, then he's working on the emotional, and then he's working on the thought. So at this point, he's not going in and trying to have them think something different. If you would try to do that, there would be a great amount of resistance because that's not reality in that moment for that person. So again, he is having them, their words, they are saying the feelings and the sensations that they're experiencing. He is repeating them back and having them continue to go along this cycle until they no longer feel that sensation. Dad, why does that work? Do you know why that works?
I think that as you actually speak those feelings in the moment, as the adult in the moment, it's like the adult conscious mind begins to see, oh my gosh, that's not happening, or that's not what I'm feeling. And it can get very emotional. It can get very, very powerful physically, thoughts, whatever. But when you have them repeat all three, no matter what, they begin to like ease up. And once they are at a state of equilibrium,
Yes.
peace, you could go back 6 months later and you could not raise this.
It will not come
It's
back.
permanent.
Okay. Why do you think that with the specific trauma of death that you're not able to get it 100%? Is it because of the unknown of what happens after people die?
No.
Or?
Well, it could be that, but I mean, it's like the child's gone.
Okay.
What could have been will never be. I'll never see my baby get married. I'll never see her graduate from junior high or elementary school. I'll never be able to get those little notes, say I, L-U-V-U, those kinds of things.
Got it. Okay. 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 So is this a similar situation that you go through when it has to do with physical or emotional abuse? Are there any kind of different aspects of physical and emotional abuse that you will utilize in order to try to tap in and help release that type of experience?
It's very similar. With death, though, I move very, very quickly. With molestation, I try to move as quickly as I can. In a pervasive molest, what I have found that there's about 3 stages. First stage, the child's kind of in shock. Second stage, the child is like numb. Third stage, child falls in love with the perpetrator because they feel that the only person that would love them is someone like the perpetrator or the perpetrator. And they are like in a parallel universe. They're putting on a face for the outside, but they can't say anything.
Got it. Okay. And typically, I mean, is there any amount of time, depending on how intense trauma is, in terms of how long it it takes?
Here's the thing that makes a difference. I had a young man who came from a wonderful family. All his developmental stages were intact. He's 16. He's on the way to high school. Very, very wonderful kid.
Yeah.
There's a guy out jogging. It's dark. He's wearing a dark a running suit. His hair's dark, and he hits the man and kills him. And what had happened is the man runs out into the road, and the kid was not at fault.
Right.
It took me two-hour sessions to clear that.
Because you had to keep going back and back and back.
No, his developmental stages were intact.
Okay.
He was balanced. I didn't have to go back. It wasn't
Oh,
jerking
I got it.
from the past.
So you were able to get that cleared quickly, is what you're saying. Okay.
Very quickly.
Okay.
But that if that hadn't have happened, he would have carried that for a lifetime.
Got it. And then it would have been harder for you to clear. It would have taken more time.
Not necessarily.
Okay. Okay.
He just would have suffered more.
Okay. I have another question in the realm of death. What happens if somebody themselves has a terminal illness or some life-threatening disease? So part of their trauma is fear of crossing over, fear of leaving loved ones.
Oh, okay.
How do you help them?
All right. I had a guy. The guy, every member of his family had been in to see me because this guy is such a narcissist, right? I mean, he wasn't physically abusive, but he was just off the chart as far as like verbal abuse and whatever. One day, he got brain cancer.
Oh, no.
And it was the kind of cancer, it's like a spider that just spreads. It's like it's inoperable. And he calls me. He says, I need to come in. And I says, yeah, I know you do. And he came in and he went through all the things that his childhood, why he had been such a jerk, his behavior. He went through everything that happened with his kids. He became a different man. His kids loved him. He begged for their forgiveness. And then we did a lot of clearing around death and his fear of it and whatever. And he says, I'm ready to go.
So at that point, what you're doing is helping that person release any remaining ties that they have to
Yes.
past experiences
Yes.
so that they can cross over with unconditional love
Yeah,
in their
because
heart.
you read all the near-death experiences and people anguish, let's say, if it was a suicide or if there was unresolved issues, it's like it kind of holds them earthbound.
Got it.
And so, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about the big one of death. We've talked about a little bit about physical and emotional trauma. I know another one that impacts a lot of people is divorce. And again, is there anything different that you do depending on what age the child is at or what happens? Is there any other different tentacles around healing that?
Okay. With children under about maybe 6 or 7, depending on their maturity, that's a whole special area for child psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors who specialize in children. Because of their cognitive functioning, it's a neurological fact that children cannot think in any other terms other than concrete thinking up until about age 7, which is very black and white.
Okay.
So it has to be approached very, very differently. I've had children that I referred to a child psychologist, and they were able to help them at that time. When they got older, then they came in and we did deeper work as far as molestation or divorce or whatever.
Okay.
But the process is very, very similar.
Right.
Even though it's similar, it has to be individualized. It has to be tailored for that person.
For that person.
For example, I had a 747 pilot that had 2 young boys, and his wife went in to the hospital for some elective surgery, and she got a blood clot, went to the brain, she died. And so before I met with this guy, I had another friend who was an airline pilot, and I said, okay, give me some words for airline pilots. He says, okay, you want to talk about redundant backup systems? You want to talk about just a bunch of terms. And so when I went in, and I would segue some of the stuff, and it's like almost he couldn't see that some therapist was in front of him. It's almost like he's talking to himself.
Got it.
The more invisible that you are, the better.
Okay.
Because like Carl Rogers said, the answer to the problem comes from the person. And if you can be a mirror and reflect that, then they're the ones that heal themselves. Now, it's important to be a good midwife,
Yes.
and it's important to be a good mirror,
Yeah.
whatever.
Actually, that's so beautiful that you just touched on that, because that's another aspect of why we're doing the online workshop is really empowering people for them to really understand that they have within them all that they need in order to
Absolutely.
heal whatever it is.
Absolutely.
I know I've had many clients who've come to me, and they'll walk in the door, and because I'm empathic intuitive, which of course you also have the same gifts, they're afraid that I can see into their dirty laundry, and they feel that their situation is always going to be the worst, meaning that it's going to be something that's going to just tear them apart and just be horrible. How have you ever had any kind of circumstance where somebody had some kind of trauma or issue, where it, in your opinion, it wasn't something that you could help heal them from?
Let me think. The main thing for healing is the person's desire. I had a friend, a PhD psychologist that I admire, and he went to a workshop. He says 60% of the success of therapy is the client's motivation. He said 30% is if they really trust the therapist. 10% is skill. I wasn't sure whether he was joking or not, but anyway, yeah, I've had one or two people, and I just have a feeling. I said, you're not supposed to be here. Let me refer you to somebody that I think would really be a whole lot better.
Got it.
And like if I have someone who's kind of like you,
Yeah.
and I really feel like that they need more of a spiritual kind of a healing,
Yes.
or they just need to be with this person, then I'll say you shouldn't be here.
Got it. So this brings up another topic that I want to call to everyone's attention, and that is that when you really calm into yourself and trust yourself, again, we're going to be introducing you to a number of different healing modalities, and hopefully going forward, I have many more of these workshops where I continue to expose you to amazing people that are doing incredible work in the field of alternative healing. But at the end of the day, you are your own healer. And just as my dad said, 60% of that is your desire to heal. And what did you say? 30%?
30% is if they trust you.
If you're actually feeling a connection to the person that you're working with, and then of course 10% is whether that person is standing in their integrity and their skill level. But this is actually an incredible reflection, because once again, I want you to hear that you have everything that you need to heal yourself. The next step is for you to find somebody that you connect with. And we're doing a modality that connects with you and to move forward. So is there anything else that you can share about what you do, how it makes you feel to work with people, any other sort of success stories that you've had with people, whether they're suffering from what would be deemed minor trauma to major trauma, anything else that might be helpful for people?
Let me think.
I know that when I was first working with you and we were talking about putting together, some teachings, we were looking through a guy who'd written some books, Homecoming, and you were really going far into, again, the inner child work. I know that there's been a lot of information out there about an inner child as in one, but from what I'm picking up on when I'm talking to you and what I've witnessed is that there can be multiple fracturing within the self. Do you find that most people have that? Most people have sort of multiple fracturing, or no?
Everybody has it.
Everybody has it.
John Bradshaw, in his book, Homecoming, and he's written some other wonderful books. The guy, he's a PhD psychologist. He was a Jesuit Catholic priest. He left the order. He came from a dysfunctional family. He tells you that. Alcoholic. And he took all of that and turned it into a positive. He was the hottest thing and the 12-step program may still be. And his book, Homecoming, was groundbreaking. I knew he was close to the concept that I came up with too.
Yeah.
Except he was brilliant and he synthesized all the greats, but he came up with the same concept. The concept is this: if you have trauma within a developmental stage, it will freeze that stage. Therefore, you can have multiple emotional children, not just one generalized emotional child, which was kind of the thinking,
thought pattern.
the thought pattern before 1991. What's really funny is he published it in 1991. I think I published in 1991 master's thesis, but he made a lot of money.
Great thoughts were all coming together under
It's
the
like-
same idea.
It's like God just blesses whoever he's going to bless. And none of this belongs to any of us. If we have gifts, we need to share them.
Right.
We need to reach out and help our fellow man and stop the suffering that is like so prevalent. But we had the same thing. It was really funny how we came at it from a totally
different direction.
Different direction. But he's wonderful. Now, John is more in regards to the bonding and attachment work. I got a hold of him and got permission to use his developmental questionnaire in a book that I wrote for a workshop, which is about 110 pages, and it goes through and kind of describes some of the modalities that I use. But he was very wonderful and gracious, and absolutely, and so we used that.
And does this survey, I think this is what I was remembering from before, does this survey help people when they're doing trauma mapping? Because I think it asks some questions
Yes.
in each developmental age.
In the book, The Homecoming, there is a developmental questionnaire starting on page 81, going to about page 174, and it does a little subjective pretest before that developmental stage to show how you may have gotten through that stage, or
How you might have gotten around the trauma.
or where there was a train wreck.
Got it.
And so it just gives you kind of a thumbnail sketch. And it's one of the things that I use for people who have a lot of bonding and attachment issues.
Got it. Okay. What if somebody comes into you and they say, I don't necessarily feel depressed. I'm just kind of bored with my life. I feel like there should be more. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just can't seem to sort of get motivated to pursue my dreams, and sometimes I don't even know what my dreams are. They're basically suffering from sort of a low-grade apathy, or what they're coding as boredom. Pretend that somebody like that walked in and talked me through how you might look into that person to see what's going on.
There was a brilliant psychiatrist, psychologist who wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. He was in a Nazi concentration camp for 3.5 years. And he talked about like how people that gave up and that felt empty inside and had no meaning, no purpose, no spiritual, no anything. And it's an incredible treatise. He psychoanalyzed the whole world as a culture and said that we're in a state of boredom. In other words, meaninglessness.
Yes.
And a low-grade depression is called dysthymia. You can work, you can go to school, you can do whatever, but there's just no joy.
Right.
He would diagnose that as boredom or emptiness.
Okay.
And it says that our whole culture, as a culture, is like hooked on everything from looking good, drugs, overeating. I mean, that we're trying to fill up the emptiness, and there's no meaning. And so what I do is I try to find out, number one, what are the things that derail this person? What is their emptiness connected to? And then we set a goal to fill that up with meaningfulness.
Do you find, and I know you probably had these people like this come to you, do you find that still when you track back, you're finding points of impact that have shut them down or have disconnected them so that they're...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's
Yeah.
always a point of impact or
Okay.
points of impact.
The thing about it is, when we're in the womb, when we're born, we're just beautiful, beautiful children straight from God. And the thing about it is that life does a number on us. And somebody say, well, I don't have any trauma. I said, okay, great. Get in the chair. Let me just check it out. We'll do a diagnostic. and I'll always find something.
Got it.
But
Which is powerful and incredible because it means that there's a way through.
Mhm.
There's a way through.
Oh, that's the only way that I can do what I do. Everybody says, well, how do you do this all day long? And I said, well, I can't wait to get here because I know if that person's motivated, I can make a difference.
Correct.
And together we have joy. We have meaning. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
And so that meaning is like unbelievable.
So that's your experience of healing. Is it that you feel great joy when you help somebody else connect to their great joy?
I feel joy every day.
I feel the same way. I often have people ask me, oh my gosh, it must be so hard on you. You know, you must be taking in so many people's problems and you must be worrying about people so much. But actually, out of the course of my day, the times that I feel the highest resonance is when I am helping somebody else by reflecting to them their pureness, their pure love, their pure light. Because when I see someone and they're in that room and I'm in that mode, that's how I see them. I get excited like a kid at Christmas when I know that there's something that comes through me that can help them. Is this how you feel as well?
This is what Viktor Frankl said. He said, if you want to find meaning in your life, serve somebody. Mother Teresa served. Nelson Mandela served. They had meaning in their life, no matter how bad the things got. Even if you're in a Nazi concentration camp, there is meaning.
You can still be of service.
There is meaning, and that will keep you alive. He noted that one day, the guy said, the occupation troops are going to be here. They're going to free us by December 25th. It's Christmas Day, okay? And this is a month away. The guy was healthy, but about 2 days before the 25th, he thought, oh no, they're not going to come. All of his immune system shut down. Typhus kicked in, which was in everybody, and he died 2 days later.
Wow. So he died before they freed.
He lost meaning.
Yes. Is this one of the things that you talk to your clients about? Do you talk to them about one of the aspects to helping them heal is to be of service to others?
I talk to them about everything. If they're a Hopi, I'll talk to them about White Bear, the medicine man. If they're a Tibetan Buddhist, I'll talk to them about Buddhist stuff. If they're a Catholic, I'll talk to them about mystic Catholicism. No matter who they are, I will approach them. Because all these great religions have one thing in common. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Meaningful. Serving.
Loving.
Loving.
Loving. Yes. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop. Once again, I am so incredibly grateful that you are here with us today, and I hope that in some of our conversation you have found something that you can carry with you to help heal. Once again, I will be sending out a meditation video that is tied to having you connect into some of your inner children, doing breath work, and loving. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, just remember that I'll be online on Wednesday at 5:30 West Coast time in our private Facebook page to answer questions. If you have specific questions that you have for Wayne, again, you can either send them to me ahead of our live Q&A session on Wednesday, or you can post them in the Facebook chat. If I cannot answer them in the moment, I will make sure that I connect with Wayne and I will get the answers for you. I'll also make sure that I provide detail on some of the books that he mentioned today. And also, if any of you are interested in working with him as a healer, I can personally tout the fact that he is incredible. He's helped many people, including me, and I can get you his contact information. Once again, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday. Bye.